Today we're making some roast beef with a red wine sauce and some potatoes and green beans. And this dish clocks in at 710 calories, 51 grams of proteins, 64 grams of carbs and 23 grams of fat. So we're going to start off by trimming the fat from our roast beef, and then we're going to be adding a generous amount of salt, pepper and thyme. And since we're cooking this sous vide for 24 hours, adding a generous amount of salt now won't become a problem, since 24 hours is a long time, so we're going to have time to allow that salt to penetrate through the meat. So it might look like much, but it's actually going to be fine. However, if you don't cooking this sous vide and putting it in the oven, then you probably want to be a bit easier on the salt. And if you do cook it in the oven, which of course you can, I would put it at roughly 160 degrees or 320 degrees Fahrenheit for roughly 2 hours. It depends on how you want your meat cooked. Anyway, we are going to be cooking this sous vide, as I said, and what I like to do is that I would fold down the edges of the vacuum bag, because then when you put the meat in, the meat won't create a sticky mess on the outside of the bags. Then all we need to do is to vacuum seal it and get a big pot of water, which we are going to heat up to our desired temperature. And as I said, I like to put mine at 52 degrees, and then I will put it on 24 hours. It's also a good idea to trim the excess edges off, since they're just gonna take up space in your pot. Another thing I like to do is to weigh my meat before and to weigh it afterwards. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. It's just if you want to be very accurate with your calorie counting, you will lose some liquid from the meat while cooking it, so 200 grams before won't be 200 grams afterwards. And when I actually weighed this, it came out to almost exactly 20% that we lose in the weight while cooking it. Then we're going to be starting with our red wine sauce, and we're going to be slicing up 2 shallots. And making a red wine sauce is tricky from a couple of perspectives. First of all, you need a wine that you are willing to drink. If you have a wine that you're not willing to drink, you're going to enhance the flavors of the wine, so you're going to enhance the bad parts of the wine as well. So if you have a wine that's too bitter, you're just going to feel that you're getting a very bitter sauce. So you want a wine that's drinkable. That doesn't mean that you have to spend like 20 bucks on a bottle of wine, but something that you're willing to drink at least. Also, counting calories and cooking with alcohol can be somewhat tricky. I like to estimate that if we have 1 cup of red wine, it's roughly 130 calories in that cup that comes from the alcohol. And if we're cooking the wine for 30 minutes, we are reducing 65% of the alcohol that's then burned off. So what I like to do is that I estimate that if I cook a red wine sauce or something similar for 30 minutes, I will cut the calories in half from what it was before. So that's at least my estimation, and now you know. Anyway, we are going to be adding 30 grams of butter that we're going to be frying our shallots in. Then we're going to be adding 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, 1 tablespoon of flour, that's roughly 9 grams, and 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar. I'm at my country house, I didn't have any red wine vinegar, so I used white instead, and it was fine. And then we're going to add our wine, 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and then we're going to bring this to a boil and try to reduce it by at least half. Now our meat is done, so another thing I like to do is to use the cooking liquid and put them in the sauce, since they're packed with flavor. So that's a good idea. However, I didn't get that much liquid from this, so we're also going to be adding 2 tablespoons of veal stock later on. Then simply just bring this to a boil and allow it to reduce, and stir it every once in a while. What we're going to do then is that we're going to sear our meat, and to do that, if you have one, get a cast iron pan that you get really hot. I put 10 grams of butter in to sear this, and I weighed the meat before and then I weighed it after, and it came down to almost exactly losing 20% in weight. So if you're starting off by having 200 grams a portion, then you want 160 grams after it's cooked. Then all we need to do is sear our meat. I like to give it a good sear on all sides. And then we get to the tricky part, which is actually slicing the meat, and if you don't have a meat slicer, it's quite difficult to get really thin slices. But even if you don't succeed, the meat has been cooking for 24 hours, so it will still be very tender and nice. Now our sauce has been cooking for almost half an hour, and we're going to be adding some salt and some pepper. When I tasted this, I felt that the stock we used, or the cooking liquids that we used, didn't provide us with as much stock flavor as I wanted, so I added 2 tablespoons of veal stock as well. Now all we need to do is to drain this, just to get the bits of shallot out, and then we're almost done. I like to add some green beans for some vegetables to this as well. We're cooking potatoes, which I usually do 300 grams a portion. I've added a spreadsheet as usual in the description where you can change the portion size if you want to change anything, and everything is calculated with calories, so if you change the portion size, the amount of calories should be changing as well. Trying to make counting calories somewhat easier. And that's it. I think this is delicious, and I hope you try it, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.